Three spine-chilling true Easter horrors exposed. Sinister secrets and cursed discoveries await. In a quiet Ohio suburb where tulips bloom and children laugh, something sinister lurks behind the bright facade of Easter celebrations. Sarah Reynolds, a mother of two, knows all too well how fragile life can be. Since losing her husband 6 months ago, each day feels like balancing on a tightrope. This Easter, however, the chill in the air hints at something far more terrifying than her own grief. Pictures of their beautiful lawn and neighborhood are twisted memories, tainted by ghostly whispers that haunt Sarah as she prepares for the annual egg hunt. Just as she steps outside, her heart races. The sun glimmers off the brightly painted eggs, but an unsettling presence crawls under her skin. A blur dashes past the old oak in the yard, but when she twists to look, it's gone. Like a wisp of smoke, its memory slips through her fingers. She shakes it off, reluctantly brushing aside a horrible sense of dread. As the hunt begins, uneasy laughter ripples through the crowd, but it's splintered, like cracks in a veil of happiness. Sarah's gaze travels across the familiar faces of friends that no longer feel welcoming. Cryptic messages begin to appear, etched into her wooden fence, reminders of dark secrets. Some eggs hide secrets. Who would dare to mar this family event with such chilling words? Her mind races, trying to shield her kids from the growing shadows that flicker just beyond perception. Concerned, she approaches the sheriff, an old friend of her late husband, seeking comfort. "You're just stressed, Sarah. No need to jump to conclusions." The patronizing tone sends her heart racing. In his eyes, she sees echoes of worry that he fails to express aloud. She feels the unspoken weight of their tight community wrapping around her, a choking embrace meant to push her deeper into silence. Days unfold, each one heavier than the last. Sarah uncovers the community's dark history, a case of a vanished child haunting every whisper and shadow. The faces she once found comfort in morph into something grotesque, menacing smiles obscuring hidden truths. Families gather, traditions continue, yet within the glossy surface lies a festering wound. Long-buried secrets bubble to the surface, reeking of betrayal and loss, twisting her perception of safety. As ominous clouds gather above, Sarah is left trembling. The storm feels like a harbinger of doom, electrifying her senses. Will she uncover the truth before it consumes her and the children she fights so hard to protect? Each rattling gust sends chills racing up her spine. A scream cuts through the night, raw and primal, shattering the fragile calm. Who or what knows her fears? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow.
If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. A shiver slides down her spine as she stands on her porch, feeling a mounting pressure from the gathering storm. The shadows come alive, slithering near the edges of her home, urging her to dig deeper, to confront the dark legend she once dismissed as mere folklore. Frantic, she tries to maintain her sanity, but the spectral whispers grow louder, digging up family secrets she's wished to forget. Would you sacrifice your family to keep the past hidden? The question reverberates within her, a horrific echo wrapped in her own haunting memories. As she clutches her heart, poised on the brink of her world collapsing, the storm breaks, and in an electric flash, she knows the truth is no longer an option. It's now a matter of survival against the grim revelations that lie ahead. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling windows and tugging at the branches of the trees. Sarah stumbled back inside, heart racing as the thunder roared overhead, drowning out the silence that had settled so ominously around her. The kids were in bed, blissfully unaware of the chaos brewing outside, and that small comfort felt like a protective barrier against the horror she feared loomed just beyond her front door. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, lurking in the shadows between the flickering street lamps. She glanced towards the backyard, where a sickly yellow light flickered dimly. Why was that light on? She hadn't left it on. Panic surged through her, but she had to calm down. Nothing could keep a good mother down, not when her kids were at stake. With slow, cautious steps, she grabbed the flashlight from the drawer, its familiar weight grounding her. Each step into the dark was heavy, as if the air thickened with dread. Outside, the rain started to pour, drenching the ground and swallowing the ground alive in a relentless downpour. As she approached the yard, the eerie glow pulsated like a heartbeat, drawing her closer against her better judgment. "Just the fence light," she whispered, convincing herself. But deep down she knew better. Suddenly a harsh rustle tore through the night, and Sarah froze. Had something moved? Shadows darted, merging with the chaos of the storm. Her pulse quickened. Then from the corner of her eye, she caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure. A child? No, it couldn't be. There were no children outside. "Just the wind," she murmured. She squared her shoulders and pressed on. She had to know. Whoever or whatever had been scrabbling about in her life, she would address it. The light flickered again, illuminating the wooden fence. It was worse than she imagined.
A series of words now sprawled across the boards, letters twisted and crooked. "Find us." Her blood ran cold. This was not just a prank. Her knees trembled, but she forced herself closer, drowning in confusion and horror. As the rain lashed at her face, it felt like hands were reaching out, trying to pull her into the darkness. She turned to go back inside, but before she could, another scream sliced through the night. Not her children's sound, a mournful cry that echoed with a familiar sorrow. The ghostly voice was timeless, soaked in terror. Her heart raced with adrenaline as she darted back to the door. Just as she reached for the handle, she heard it. Soft, delicate giggles creeping from the shadows. The hair on her neck stood straight as she spun around. Two small figures stood by the fence, drenched, yet glowing in a pale, otherworldly light. "Mommy!" they chorused, their voices threading through the air with haunting clarity. They shouldn't have been out there. Was it some cruel joke? They were supposed to be asleep, safe in their beds. "Sarah," a whisper floated into her ear, scraping against her sanity. The voice was familiar yet twisted, like an old song sung wrong. She gripped the doorframe, wavering between panic and the instinct to rescue her children. But when she looked toward the figures again, shadows stretched and warped, bodies shifting into something ancient and horrifying. Their smiles no longer held warmth, but a dark promise, and with it came a rush of dread. Now she stood frozen, paralyzed by fear, realizing the implications of what she was seeing. These were not her children. As thunder crashed around her, the piercing light dimmed, and the sinister figures took one step closer. Would she face the darkness to save her true children, or were they already lost to these specters? With her heart pounding in an erratic rhythm, she knew one thing: she had to act. But could she uncover the dark truth before it completely swallowed them whole? The storm raged on, and as the figures leaned closer, a terrifying question hung in the air. What secrets would she have to unearth to save her family from a curse that seemed older than time? The figures advanced, their forms twisting against the oppressive darkness like smoke coiling into a night sky. As they drew nearer, their laughter morphed into a cacophony of whispers, each one a stab of freezing realization that wormed its way into Sarah's mind. "Find us, Mommy," they begged, but it was not her children's voices that tugged at her heart. It was something more twisted, more sinister. The air thickened, pressing down on her shoulders like iron weights, forcing breaths that barely reached her lungs. She glanced around, searching for something, anything that could pull her back from the brink of madness. The flashlight flickered, a dying star in her trembling hand as she backed away from the specters. She had to think.
She needed a plan, a way to banish the shadows and return to the safety of her home. "Get away!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the night. But the words felt weak, cast aside by the onslaught of giggles that echoed back. The figures paused, their shimmering eyes locking onto hers, voids of darkness where no light could penetrate. The dim light flickered one last time before sputtering into oblivion. Blackness enveloped her. Panic surged anew, and she spun around, desperately to find the door, a lifeline to her children. But as she stumbled backward, the cold, wet ground slipped beneath her. The grass clutched at her legs like skeletal fingers searching for a victim. When she finally regained her footing and turned back toward her house, the door seemed impossibly far, swallowed by the darkness that seemed alive. How had everything turned so twisted? In the stillness of the moments that followed, an image flickered in her mind. Her children, tucked away safely in their beds. She couldn't lose them. The thought of them repeating the phrase, "Find us," tied a noose around her heart. She navigated the yard, eyes darting to the fence, praying the figures would remain where they were. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating them for a heartbeat. They had changed. No longer children, but blank-eyed wraiths with elongated limbs, terror painted across their faces. They elongated, reaching out with hands that stretched toward her, grasping for her warmth. "Mommy, you can't leave us!" one of them wailed, the sound breaking Sarah like fragile glass. Their laughter echoed in a grotesque harmony, and she pressed her hands to her ears. Suddenly, desperation clawed at her. An idea, no matter how insane, formed in her mind. She had a history with these figures. They were the stories told around flickering campfires. Every dim light in the night now a potential torch invoking something long buried. The grave they wanted her to unearth, the truth they wanted her to confront, it all pointed back to stories her mother used to tell. The lives of children lost in a storm, trapped in a time loop, forever searching for their families. "Wait," she yelled, feeling momentarily emboldened. "What do you want?" They paused, the ethereal glow dimming with silent deliberation. Were they trapped? Or were they something darker, spirits fulfilled by tormenting the living? Sarah peered through the darkness, hoping to glean any semblance of truth in their hollow eyes. "Find us!" they whispered again, the urgency in their tone rising like smoke curling from a flame. With a sudden clarity, she realized something. The curse didn't belong to them alone. It was the bond of a mother, a cycle of pain that her family had been dragged into. But what could be the key? Just then, a crack of thunder broke the silence again, causing her to jump. The figures recoiled slightly, as if scared of the storm. Fear gripped her once more as she took another unsteady step forward, inching closer to the fence. "Maybe I can help you," she shouted, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "But first, tell me how." Before she could finish, the backing storm roared once more, and their faces transformed into visions of agony. She felt helpless. The wind began to shift, swirling violently, as if awakening some beast long trapped beneath layers of time. The atmosphere crackled, and suddenly she caught the fierce glow of their light fade. The connection was breaking. She had to act now. The storm raged louder than ever, drowning out the cries, as something darker began to emerge into the shadows. A silhouette towered beside the fence, looming ever closer. No, oh God, no, what was happening? Her heart raced. What would it take to break the curse before it consumed them all? As terror clawed at her, she realized she was out of time. The silhouettes extended their hands, and her body went cold. She was losing her grip, both on reality and her children. What horrors awaited her just out of reach? What secrets lay beneath the soil she was begging to unearth? As the wind shrieked around her and darkness clawed her heart, she realized the true terror was yet to come. But as she spoke, doubts slithered into her mind. Would helping them lead her to her children, or would it bind her to their fate? The ground trembled beneath her as if acknowledging the weight of her past. An unnatural chill seeped into her bones, a reminder of every story her mother told her about lost souls, children yearning for the warmth of home, forever entrapped in another realm. The realization struck her then. To save them, she must confront what lay buried, her own childhood fears, her denial of their existence. The air thickened with an oppressive force, and as the figures began to chant, their words took on a rhythm that pulsed against her chest. Find us, find us, find us. Their voices propelled her deeper into the vortex of despair, threatening to pull her in, to make her one with their wretched existence. The towering silhouette lunged forward, shattering her resolve. It was then Sarah pivoted, terror igniting her instincts. A surge of desperate clarity emerged. "No!" she roared, her voice piercing through the din, trembling yet fierce. "I will not be added to your history." Clenching her fists, she forced herself to think, her mind racing for a way to dissipate the terror around her. Suddenly, from the depths of her fractured memory, an incantation whispered back to her, a shard of a long-forgotten lullaby. It had always been a thread of comfort, one that soothed her children to sleep despite the storm. If she could recall it fully, perhaps she could reopen the gateway, turn despair into rescue. Her heart pounded like thunder in her ears as she began to chant, the words slipping from her lips like a thread unraveling the tapestry of night. The wind responded violently, swirling around her like a vortex, battling back the shadow. The figures halted, their faces twisting with a mix of hope and horror. But was it too late? Would the chant be enough to bridge the chasm between her past and present? The ground began to shake harder, displacing more earth as the storm raged on, a terrifying dance of chaos enveloping everything in its path. Sarah's inner voice drowned with doubt. What if the melody worked in reverse, binding her forever in their plight? As her voice rose, the silhouette edged closer, an insatiable hunger clearly edged in its twisted features. Would her memory be powerful enough to set them free, or would it unleash horrors yet unseen? The wind howled louder, drowning out her fears as she pressed forward into the unknown. The words danced on her tongue, familiar yet haunting. Each syllable ignited something within her, a flicker of hope, but the shadows tightened around her like a vice. The wraiths' faces were drawn in anguish, desperate encouragement flickering across their translucent features. Yet they were still lost, still trapped, while the looming silhouette became a nightmarish giant against the thunderous sky. With each sand, a scream echoed in Sarah's mind. The storm roared louder, a cacophony competing with her voice. The earth trembled with anger, as if furious at the disturbance of long-buried secrets. Was this the awakening they yearned for, or a wrathful response to her incantation? Thunder cracked like the whips of ancient gods, and the blackened outline surged forward. It inhaled the air around her, a ravenous maw that wanted to swallow the very essence of her being. She felt its wispy tendrils brush against the edges of her consciousness, pricking her thoughts with a chilling promise. Join us. Sarah clung to the melody, her voice rising in urgency. It was a tether pulling her back from the brink of the abyss. But the wraiths began to twist and writhe, their forms contorting in pain as if her words were a double-edged sword. "Free us!" they screamed. But she could see in their hollow eyes. Their freedom was not without cost. Lightning struck nearby, a flash illuminating the true horror of the scene. Among the wraiths, familiar faces peeked through. Children she had lost during the storm years ago. Their eyes were wide, pleading. They were caught, too, in this eternal torment. "Mama, help us!" echoed their cries, slicing through the tempest like shards of glass. Her heart wrenched, torn between hazardous hope and paralyzing dread. I'm here! I'm here!" she screamed back, her voice hoarse from the rawness of emotion. Yet, as the storm howled, it drowned her words, almost mocking her. The silhouette loomed closer, its breath palpable like a fog smothering the warmth of the living. Sarah felt the very ground beneath her tremble in fear, a tremor mirroring her own racing heart. Was it fear of the darkness,
or the realization that she was one step away from madness. "No!" she shouted defiantly, fueled by a surge of adrenaline. "I won't lose you again!" With every ounce of strength, she recited the lullaby, her voice intertwining with the cries of the lost. The notes threaded together, pushing back against the darkness. The shadows flickered, shuddering in response. The giant halted, though its hunger was insatiable. Something shifted. Sarah could feel the energy morphing, growing chaotic, a storm within a storm. In that crushing moment, she felt a pulse beneath her feet, as if something ancient, long forgotten, stirred violently. It was trying to break through, to reclaim the ground it once called home. Sudden images flashed through her mind, visions of otherworldly realms, a nexus of twisted identities, each segment hacking away at her sanity. Then, just as quickly, silence fell. The storm paused, caught in a surreal moment of suspense. Time slowed. All she could hear was the rapid beat of her heart and the whispers of the wraiths, echoing more faintly now. "Find us." But find them where? The sense of impending doom remained heavy in the air, like a predator poised to pounce, stalking her every move. She stared at the silhouette, unsure if it would retreat or consume her.
In that harrowing moment of uncertainty, she heard a voice from the shadows, tangled in the fabric of despair, whispering something insidious. "What will you sacrifice to pull them back?" The question hung ominously, a shroud concealing the horrible truth behind her connection to the wraiths, to the storm. The lines separating rescue and ruin blurred, and in that terrible instant, Sarah realized the price of help was far darker than she ever imagined. With terror crawling up her spine, she prepared to uncover her deepest fear. What was she willing to lose in her quest to save them? An answer loomed in the whispering wind, dangerously close, as the storm threatened to unleash its final act of wrath. What awaited her in that suffocating darkness? The moment hung like a guillotine over Sarah's head, the weight of the unspoken truth tightening its grip. The voice, a soft caress of dread, echoed in her mind. "What will you sacrifice to pull them back?" Each syllable clawed at her resolve, pushing her deeper into the morass of despair. Damn it, what would it take? As the silhouette's form surged forward, an unbearable chill swept over her, weaving between her ribs, freezing her blood. She felt the weight of time dragging, seconds stretched out like eternity. She could do this. She had to do this. The wraiths twisted, their cries morphing into a terrible harmony that sang of loss. Sarah's heart ached with their agony, mingling with the unspeakable sorrow of the faces she recognized so intimately. "No more games, no more fear. Tell me," she yelled, almost beckoning the darkness to answer her. "What do you want from me?" But only silence responded, thick and heavy, pressing against her lungs. The wraiths were fading now, their ethereal forms shimmering like candlelight on the verge of extinguishing. Did they want her in trade? The thought seemed to strangle her. She knew what lay beyond that silhouette, the yawning void of despair, the promises of the damned. Lightning splintered the air again, illuminating the malignant expression within that dark figure. Long, spindly fingers reached toward her, each twitch stirring the deadly winds around. The wraiths, caught in this vortex of despair, grew more frantic. "Please, save us!" Their voices morphed into a haunting chorus that reverberated through her consciousness, every plea like a knife to her heart. A flash of clarity pierced through the encroaching darkness. What haunted her were choices. Decisions made from fear, guilt washing over her like the storm. She'd shut them away for so long, hiding from her own failures. But what if the cost was her own sanity, her life? Wasn't that what brought her here in the first place? As she choked on the weight of such a decision, something twisted inside her. Rage, bitterness, acceptance, emotions battled within her heart like grotesque specters. "You don't get to have me!" she screamed, her voice rising above the tumult, the anguish of the wraiths echoing like distant thunder. But even as she fought against the tide of dread, she could feel the shadows pulling back, a sum of fear retreating like a tide. The rhythm of the storm began to change. No longer a raging beast, it pulsed with a desperate need, a heartbeat synchronizing with her own. "Sacrifice," the voice from the shadows breathed, wrapping around her, intoxicating her with its promise and threat. "To save them, you must want something back." Was that it? The answer clawed at the edges of her sanity. She wanted her children back, wanted to take back all the time they lost.
But what if it demanded her soul? As the silhouette surged forward, Sarah felt a flicker, a spark of defiance igniting inside her. If it required her spirit, perhaps she could turn the shadows against themselves. But how? With renewed determination, she whispered, "I will trade. I'll make it right." Each word breathed courage into the storm, and suddenly the atmosphere crackled with volatile energy. As the darkness convulsed with anticipation, the ground beneath her pulsed once more, reshaping the reality around her. Shadows twisted and turned, morphing into visions. The familiar faces of her children tormenting her with their grief, their pleading eyes encased in a corner of ethereal fear. "What have I done?" she gasped, her heartbeat quickening, the gravity of her choices crushing her. Was she really willing to gamble everything on a whisper of hope? Then came the final question, looming larger than any fear. What if the price is greater than you can bear? The tumult began anew, swirling around her like a hurricane. In that moment, she realized the storm had only just begun. What had she unleashed? What awaited her in the darkness, now alive and demanding? The air thickened, and Sarah felt a surge of energy pulling her down, deeper into a pulse of shadows. Panic clawed at her throat as she struggled to maintain her footing. With gritted teeth, she forced herself to breathe, to fight against the tide of voices that howled around her. The faces of her children twisted in the dark, their expressions carved from despair. "Mom!" The cry echoed, a piercing wail that cut through the cacophony. Her heart staggered at the sound, laced with the bitterness of memories. It was a plea she'd never forget. "Enough!" she screamed, desperation fueling her words. "What do you want from me?" The silhouette loomed larger, coalescing into a grotesque figure, an entity woven from dread and madness. It lingered on the edge of understanding, tantalizing her with the possibilities that flickered with dying stars. "Your heart, your regret, your darkest fears," it hissed, a voice silky smooth but steeped in malice. Each word slithered into her, burrowing inside, igniting old nightmares. "Let them go,"
she shouted, fighting against the guilt that gnawed at her insides. "I'll give you anything!" "How? But how you sure? Can you dare to pay the full price?" The figure's laughter echoed, rich with amusement, twisting through the wind and drowning her resolve. Her mind raced, splashing through memories of laughter, bedtime stories, and the gentle touch of her children's hands. What would they think of her now? The storm around her trembled, shifting like a living being, calling out to her subconscious fears, exposing her vulnerabilities. Her heart raced, slamming against her ribs. It felt like a countdown, each beat reminding her of the weight of her choice. "I would do anything!" she cried out, tears streaming down her cheeks, hot and burning against the chill. "Please, just give me back my children." Suddenly, the shadows split open and revealed a door, a portal that shuddered with energy, glimmering like a mirage. "Then step through and embrace the truth of your sacrifice." The figure beckoned her, its long fingers curling like vines wrapped around the marrow of her fears. Could she trust it? Could the darkness hold the key to her children's return? Each breath felt like fire in her lungs. She had to decide, had to leap into that uncertainty, the edge of a knife glimmering in the darkness. Without thinking, she took a step toward the portal. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, everything went black. A shadow breathed its icy breath against her skin, and Sarah was thrust into a realm of torment. Faces swirled in the mist, shapeless wraiths with pain etched into every feature. "No!" she screamed, the sound swallowed by a deafening silence as the reality of stakes unfurled before her. The chilling realization struck. This was the true abyss, the place her children may have been lost forever. "Welcome. You will not leave without facing your truth." Their haunting chorus echoed, and she could feel their pain like a whip against her heart. Each face was a mirror showing her the choices that led her here, the doubts, the failures, the regrets. The shadows tightened their grip, suffocating her resolve. But then, memories surged forth,
flooding her senses, her children playing, laughing, and her promise to keep them safe. "Your decision will be your undoing," the dark figure taunted, looming closer. "Can you bear the cost?" Sarah's pulse thrummed in her ears as she drew a deep, shaky breath. "I'll show you what sacrifice truly means." With that, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Maybe, just maybe, she could turn this nightmare into a weapon. It might not be the bargain she expected, but was she ready for the fight? As she gathered her courage, the darkness shuddered, reacting to her defiance, and suddenly the storm erupted once more, unleashing a whirlwind of shadows that threatened to consume her whole. The price of truth was steep, and she had no idea what it would demand next. What horrors awaited her in this twisted realm?
Was she ready to face herself? To confront the ghosts of who she once was? The darkness enveloped Sarah, swirling around her like a black mist. She felt detached, as if her consciousness floated outside her body. Each breath was a struggle against the stifling air, thick and heavy, almost alive. Voices echoed around her, a tumultuous chorus that pierced through her soul. They were less words and more emotions: guilt, despair, a longing that twisted like a knife. "Mom, help, please." The pleas morphed into cries, scratching at her sanity. "Stop!" she screamed, clapping her hands over her ears. "Leave me alone!" But the wraith-like faces continued to swirl around her, shimmering into existence and then fading away into shadows again, each one a fragment of a memory she wished to forget. Sarah stumbled backward, feeling the icy ground beneath her bare feet. Heart racing, she frantically searched for a way out, a sign. But the shadows shifted into new forms, curled hands reaching out, phantom-like children laughing before melting into tears. "Betrayer," they whispered, their voices blending with the wind. "No, I loved you. I tried to protect you." She felt the anger rise, burning like a fire deep inside. But the shadows only twisted, feeding on every ounce of her fear and sadness. They coiled tighter, tightening her throat and stealing her breath. Then she remembered the figure, the entity that had promised answers. "Show yourself," she called out, bravely forcing the words through her fear. The shadows rippled, settling into a form she recognized. Its eyes glinted with malice, reflecting not just her nightmares, but her own failures. "Ah, Sarah," it hissed, tilting its head. "You've stepped into a world where truth intertwines with suffering. Are you ready to see what you've lost?" "Stop playing games with me," she shouted, indignant. But deep down, she felt the stirrings of dread. How could she face what lay hidden in the depths of her own heart? The figure stretched an arm toward her, and the ground quaked. "Face your truth. Only then can you find them." As it spoke, a vision surged, flooding her mind with vivid clarity. She saw herself again, playing with her children, laughing echoing through the house, a warm, bustling home filled with love. But then the image flickered, shadows creeping in. Voices taunted her. "You were too busy." They echoed through the void, exposing her neglect, her distractions. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't. I was." She clawed at her memories, resisting the emotional tide, desperately trying to hold on to the remnants of her past. "Every moment you chose wrong, you chained them to this reality," the figure grinned cruelly, advancing toward her. "Are you prepared to sacrifice what lies within you to set them free?" The ground shuddered, the wraiths wailed, morphing into chaos as they encircled her, feeding off her fear. A dense fog rolled in, swirling around like a storm, pressing against her chest. "I'll do anything," she gasped, clenching her fists until her nails dug into her palms. "Anything!" "Then surrender the truth of your heart," it hissed, and the shadows writhed, eager for her pact. In that moment, Sarah felt a jolt of recklessness. The aroma of her children's laughter faded, replaced by the metallic taste of despair. Would uncovering her own truth be the key to finding them? Or would it tear apart the very fabric of her soul? "Come forth," she demanded, her voice breaking the howling. The shadows whispered, awaiting her surrender, taunting her with the cost of their freedom. Would she face the horror of her truth, or would she lose them forever? And as the darkness enveloped her, she saw a flicker of light, the outline of a door barely visible, a glimmer of hope in the cavern of despair. But time was slipping away. Would she welcome the light, even if it meant losing herself? What awaited her beyond that door? The path to her children, or a depth of darkness she had never imagined? The light pulsed before her, a beacon of possibility amid the crushing shadows. Each flicker seemed to whisper her name, pulling her closer, urging her to step forward. But fear gnawed at her insides, cold and relentless. If she opened that door, what truth would she unearth? What hidden horrors lay beyond? The shadows shifted, their forms morphing and swirling, clawing at her ankles. "Sarah, come back," they hissed, their voices tainted with a familiar agony. "Remember us. Remember what you've lost." "No," she shouted, shaking her head violently. "You're not real. You couldn't be." The weight of her denial lifted, just enough to let her take a shaky step toward the light. But the night was hungry. The air thickened again, wrapping around her like chains. "You think they'll forgive you?" The voice of the figure slithered through the fog, dripping with cruel amusement. "What you find beyond that door could save them, or destroy you." With each breath, the dread surged higher. It would be so easy to turn back, to fall into the numbness she had known. But her heart raced for them. She had to know, no matter the cost. Taking a deep breath, she reached for the door, the cold wood shocking against her fingertips. A violent thrum echoed through her, a heartbeat that felt like her own. Gripping the knob, she twisted it slowly, dread pooling in her stomach. The door creaked open, revealing blinding light. But instead of warmth, it stung like the sharpest knife. Sarah stumbled forward, shielding her eyes, and what lay before her sent a shockwave of horror through her veins. She stood on the threshold of a graveyard, familiar yet twisted. The headstones were etched with the names of her children, their faces flickering like ghosts behind her eyelids. She screamed, but no sound escaped her lips. All around her, the headstones glimmered in the unnatural light, revealing memories she had buried deep. "Mommy," a tiny voice whimpered, her heart shattered. There, just beyond the shadows of the tombstones, she saw them, her children, trapped in limbo, their eyes wide with despair. "Sarah, help us!" they cried, reaching out with small, trembling hands. The shadows morphed into knowing figures, cackling softly as they witnessed her anguish. "You did this. You could have saved us." "No!" she screamed again, their faces twisted before her, reflecting the very pain she had tried to escape. "You're not real. This can't be real." Each pleading gaze twisted further into an expression of accusation. They faded into darkness, leaving behind an echo of despair that wrapped around her like a death shroud. "Face your truths, Sarah." The figure loomed closer, its every word a cold knife. "To save them, you must first understand what you sacrificed." The ground shifted beneath her feet, and Sarah stumbled again. What truth? What did she lose? The memories poured back, images of neglect and distractions, of the times she chose work over family, the phone calls she ignored while her children begged for her attention. Suddenly, images solidified, her last moments with them, shadows behind her eyes. She felt desperation peak. What do I have to do? The figure grinned, a dark satisfaction filling the air. You must surrender something profoundly dear to you to break their chains. Only then will you uncover what true sacrifice means. Terror clammed around her throat. What was dear to her? A choice loomed, heavy with dread. Would she give up her sanity? Would she give up her very essence to reclaim her children, to mend what was broken? As the fog thickened, the unrelenting demands of the shadows surged once more. Choose or remain lost among the dead. Her heart raced and an icy sweat trickled down her back. The echoing cries of her children became deafening, drowning out everything else. What was she willing to sacrifice? In that moment, the groundyard began to splinter, the headstones cracking and fading into blackness, a realm that hungered for her fear and despair. If you choose wrong. The figure's voice faded into a sinister laugh, echoing sinisterly around her. This was only the beginning. What other depths of horror were waiting to be unearthed? What truths would she find,
And would they unlock the chains holding her children in this dark stasis, or would they seal their fate forever? Sarah's heart pounded against her chest like a war drum, each beat echoing with the crushing weight of her choices. The shadows lurked, nefarious, whispering threats that seeped into her very core. The figure coiled like a predator, its smile razor-sharp, revealing a truth she had long buried. She was teetering on the precipice of surrender. In that moment, she realized the fates of her children hinged on her courage. "What are you willing to sacrifice?"
The words twisted her gut. How could she answer that? Each breath she took felt stale, threatening to choke her as the dark realm pulsed with malevolent energy. The faces of her children flickered in and out of the shadows, their expressions a haunting blend of innocence and anguish. Their cries reverberated inside her mind, each plea ripping through her heart like a jagged knife. "Mommy?" The weight of regret surged forward. "Mommy, help us!" She squeezed her eyes shut, blocking out the images, desperate to find clarity. What must she give up to save them? Her sanity? Her memories? The delicious normalcy of family evenings? "Whatever it takes," she gasped, tearing her eyes away from the phantom children. "I'll do anything!" The figure leaned closer, jagged teeth gleaming in the dim light. "Then remember, Sarah, sacrifice demands its due. Will you bargain your life force to rescue your little ones? Or are you afraid to embrace the darkness yourself?" Darkness wrapped around her like a shroud. The words struck hard, igniting a maelstrom of fear inside her. She felt the storm battering against her soul as the wraiths began their mocking chant, a cruel melody of lost potential. "You could have saved us. You could have saved us." "No!" she cried, a surge of defiance roiling her insides. At that moment, a fiery desperation ignited within her. A fierce, unyielding love burned bright and hot. "You want my essence? You want my spirit?" she roared into the void, her voice raw yet determined. "I'll give you my fear. I'll give you my uncertainty, but I won't lose my children." In the depths of her heart, she felt it crack. An unspeakable void gave way to transparency, exposing past failures with stark clarity. But no longer would she let regret bind her. The moment was now. She would face the truth and reclaim what was rightfully hers. "Bring it!" she shouted defiantly, her resolve solidifying like steel. "If sacrificing my essence is what it takes to bring them back, then let's do this!" As if responding to her boldness, the shadows flared, swirling violently in a tempest of darkness. Thunder roared, lightning lighting up the remnants of the graveyard, the faces of the wraiths becoming twisted and grotesque. Their sorrow morphed into a primal roar of anguish and hope, clashing into the depths of Sarah's consciousness. With a guttural scream born from the depths of her soul, Sarah reached deep within, pulling forth the anguish that had once consumed her. The shadows quivered. She hurled her pain into the night, reclaiming her spirit, binding it to the memory of laughter, warmth, and all that had once been bright and beautiful. "Take it!" she yelled, unleashing her guilt like a tempest, a wild, unrelenting storm, fierce enough to tear apart the very fabric of despair. "But you will give me my children!" The figure countered, its expression darkening as it recoiled momentarily, then rushed forward with blinding speed. It extended its gnarled fingers, ready to grasp her sacrifice. And in that electric moment, it was as though time stopped. Surrounding Sarah, the shadows morphed, folding in on themselves as they sucked in her sacrifice like a raging fire devouring all that lay before it. The air throbbed with energy, the storm swirling more violently than before. She clutched her heart, feeling the tremors of pain and liberation intertwining, bracing for impact. Then, just as quickly, silence descended, blanketing the storm. "What have you done?" The figure hissed around teeth stained with malice. "You've unleashed horrors that will forever echo in your soul." But the biggest blow landed when the air crackled again, birthing a flash of blinding light. It surged outward, bearing the faces of her children, bright, sparkling, and clear. "Mommy!"
Their voices rang out like 1,000 wind chimes dancing in unison, surrounding her with warmth, the polar opposite of the darkness that had clung to her so tightly. "Hold on!" she cried, reaching for the light refracting through the shadows, each flicker bringing warmth that enveloped her like a comforting blanket. "Mommy, we're here!" In a climactic rush, the light collided with the darkness. For a moment, fear gripped Sarah, her heart racing with uncertainty. But then she felt it. A tether binding her to her children, a tether forged through sacrifice and love. The bond rippled out, breaking through the sinister realm they'd been trapped in for so long. "Let them go!" Sarah screamed, her soul igniting into a defiant flame. She remembered the lullabies, the hugs, and the moments that hadn't been lost, moments now surging into the void. The shadows writhed, twisting in agony as the light expanded and illuminated the dark realm, dismantling its grip piece by piece as the specters cried in horror. One final surge of energy pushed the darkness back. "I will not let fear control my past," Sarah bellowed. "I am more than the shadows you cast upon my soul." Light flared, flickered, and ultimately exploded, crashing against the oppressive black with a brilliant blast of energy that consumed everything. As it dissipated, a new dawn broke, warm, golden light washing over Sarah, cleansing her of her burdens as she felt weightless. In the aftermath, the world around her shifted. The graveyard faded, morphing into the familiar sanctity of her home, blooming tulips nodding beneath the gentle spring sun. There, standing by the front door, were her children, alive and glowing with the warmth of the sun as they rushed into her arms. "Mommy!" they exclaimed, their faces radiant with laughter, echoing pure joy. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I found you." The shadows long gone, Sarah embraced them with a fierce love that pulsed like wildfire. She felt whole again, revived, free. Together, they stepped back into their home, breathing life into the light that shone through their window.
Every future moment glimmered before her, vibrant and untainted, their laughter dancing around her like a sweet melody. And in that sacred moment, Sarah whispered back to the shadows, fading into silence, "I will not carry you with me. I am finally free." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting away the last remnants of darkness, she understood, not just the price of her sacrifice, but the immeasurable value of love for her children. A love that would forever guide her, bearing light where fear once trodden. Now, more than ever, the future was hers to embrace. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep these thrilling tales alive. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this shocking conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this gripping finale. Your support means everything.